They exiled us, branded us monsters, hurled our kind into the abyss to be swallowed by silence and radiation. But humanity doesn't die in the dark. It builds in it. 800 years later, our silence ends. Not with a scream, but with the sound of 1,000 cloaked warships decloaking above their capital. And we only sent the vanguard. They forgot about us. Now we teach them why that was a mistake the galaxy will never forget. They called it exile, but it was a death sentence dressed in politics. Humanity stood accused, framed for a bioengineered plague that wiped out 3 council worlds. The evidence was laughably forged: data glitches, fake timestamps, witnesses that vanished before they could speak. But the vote was unanimous. Earth was cast into the void, its people shoved into decaying colony ships and herded toward a sector no map dared name. The fracture expanse, a place of radiation storms, gravitational tears, and silence so deep it smothered the soul. They thought we'd die quietly. The first century was hell. Ships failed. Food ran out. Children were born in metal tombs floating in dark nothing. We lost half the population before we learned to strip radiation for power, before we started converting dead ships into living stations. The void didn't kill us. It forged us. Every death became data. Every failure, a blueprint. Earth was gone, but its memory was weaponized. By the 3rd century, we were building cities inside asteroids, cloaking them from Council tech. By the 4th, we had AI constructs smarter than anything the Council ever dared create. We called the network Civra, civilized rational authority. It didn't rule us. It guided. It remembered. It evolved. They forgot about us. We never forgot them. Commander Vieira Salas stood on the bridge of the Wraithborn, eyes fixed on the growing sphere of light in the distance. A council sun was dying faster than physics allowed. Not a coincidence. A test. Civra had deployed a relic, a stellar destabilizer created from hybrid tech centuries old. A whisper of what humanity could do now. The star's scream would reach the council in days. Panic would follow. Then questions. "Are we ready to begin phase mirror?" asked Kale, her second. She didn't turn. "It's already begun." Across council space, hundreds of black sites flickered online, stations no one remembered building, outposts nestled in forgotten trade routes, powered by dark fusion and silence. No announcements. No threats. Just absence. Ships rerouted themselves. Colonies stopped reporting. Academies lost entire data archives. They wouldn't see it as an attack. Not yet. Kale's voice lowered. "I almost feel sorry for them." "No, you don't," she said. "And they didn't feel sorry for us." She walked from the viewport, her stride measured, each step echoing through steel engineered not to echo. Everything here was intentional. Human. Precise. The expanse had no chaos. Chaos had been burned out over centuries. "They'll think it's pirates. Or solar anomalies," Kale said. "They'll lie to each other until truth becomes inconvenient. Then they'll panic. And they'll call for help. But there won't be a number to dial. Just an echo." The war hadn't started. It had already been won. By children raised in gravity chambers, trained in vacuum, fluent in 3 forms of cybernetic warfare before puberty. By soldiers who saw Earth not as a place but as an oath. One council colony, Altrex 4, sent a distress beacon. A minor research moon had disappeared overnight. Its orbit held debris, but nothing matched the original station. One fragment carried a message. "We never left. We just became better." Vieira reviewed the footage once, then deleted it. Let them think it was random. Let them scramble. She didn't want them unified. She wanted them confused. That's when they made mistakes. Civra's voice sounded in her neural link, serene, sexless, older than anyone alive. "Phase mirror at 38% penetration. Resistance minimal. Localized pushback projected in Sector Zeta 4 within 72 hours. Vieira responded without speaking. Thoughts laced with intent. "Show me what they're losing." A cascade of images filled her mind: educational systems rewritten, military AI overwritten, training algorithms looping strange phrases, Earth idioms, war songs, the sound of a human heartbeat recorded in the 22nd century played backwards as an anthem. She allowed herself a small, private smile. When the Council exiled humanity, they feared what humans might do. They never imagined what humans could become. Kale stepped beside her. Sivra's estimates say we'll control all subspace NAV paths within 3 cycles. And then? She asked. Then they beg. No. Then they understand. The command deck dimmed as the Wraithborn prepared to breach into local council space. A single jump. Not an invasion. A statement. One ship. Cloaked. Silent. Drifting past their strongest fleets, their most defended worlds. They wouldn't see it. Wouldn't even feel it. But they'd find the imprint afterward, a massive data injection into their archives, a history they never knew existed. Footage from Earth's final broadcasts. Images of starving children on condemned colony ships. A tribunal where evidence was silenced, not considered. Testimonies that never aired. And Diarra's voice, pre-recorded, cold as steel. We were forgotten. Now we return, not for blood. For memory. The jump initiated. Diarra's body tensed, not from fear, but focus. The bridge shimmered with distortion as space tore around them. Moments later, they were in Council territory. A moon-sized station blinked past them, oblivious. Ships patrolled nearby, unaware of what ghost had just passed by. She waited. 3 minutes later, Sivra confirmed. The payload has been delivered. Good. Now they would know. Not who. But what. They'd question their sensors. They'd interrogate their captains. They'd accuse each other of weakness, sabotage, treason. And in their distraction, humanity would move again. Viera turned to Kale. Prepare the next fleet. No weapons. Just information. Seriously? War isn't always about fire. Sometimes it's about oxygen. What happens when it runs out? He nodded, a little unsettled. Good. She wanted them all sharp. In her private quarters, she accessed a file no one else could see. It was old. It had been transmitted from Earth during exile, encoded so deep even Sivra hadn't decrypted it until a decade ago. It was her great-grandmother's voice. If you're hearing this, then the Council was wrong. We didn't die. We didn't fade. And if you've made it this far, you've already won. Just don't become them. Never forget why they feared us. It wasn't our weapons. It was our will. Viera closed the file. Her eyes narrowed. She wouldn't become them. But they would become her. Counselor Caravan rarely attended subcommittee briefings. Most were bloated ceremonial nonsense, layers of pomp wrapped around the same recycled fears, resource quotas, rogue trade routes, cultural contamination. Today was different. Today they were lying to themselves with too much confidence. That was always a warning sign. The speaker, Admiral Drelvo, waved 3 tentacles as hollow footage hovered above the chamber. The disappearance of Ultrax 4 is being attributed to a gravitational lensing anomaly. No hostile signatures. No residual radiation. No known ship logs. Caravan leaned forward. An entire moon facility vanishes. No trace. No warning. And you blame space? Drelvo clicked in disapproval. There is no evidence of aggression. No, Caravan muttered. There never is. Until it's over. The other counselors barely glanced up. The room hummed with apathy, layered with denial and the stink of bureaucratic comfort. Centuries of peace had made them arrogant. Their grip on the galaxy had never been truly challenged. The occasional pirate uprising. A civil dispute here, a skirmish there. All manageable. Predictable. Containable. Caravan stood. I've requested declassification of Sector Theta relic archives. I believe the recent anomalies, Ultrax 4, the derailed comms satellites in the Uran Belt, the data hemorrhage from the Lydex Academy, are connected. The Chancellor looked down over her bifocal visor. Caravan, the Theta files are sealed for a reason. Conspiracy theories about extinct species are not. Humanity, he interrupted, his voice sharp. Say it. You've all avoided the word like it might infect you. A ripple of discomfort passed through the chamber. The humans are gone. Someone muttered from the back. That's what you want to believe, Caravan said. But there are signals. Ancient ones, yes, but they're becoming active again. A probe was intercepted near the edge belt. It carried coordinates, updated coordinates. And this. He activated a separate projection. It was grainy, degraded, but unmistakable. A human face, eyes closed, lips mouthing words in a language long purged from council systems. The image glitched, then refocused. One word echoed from the speaker, flat, mechanical, calm. Echo. Caravan paused to let the word settle. It's not a voice message. It's an algorithm. Self-replicating. I had it isolated in a black archive. Within an hour, it corrupted the entire firewall. Drelvo shifted uneasily. Could be residual tech. A dead signal bouncing through. It's not dead. It adapted. In real time. Another counselor laughed nervously. Are you suggesting they're back? Humans? After 800 years in the expanse? I'm not suggesting, Caravan said, quiet now. I'm warning. The Chancellor waved a dismissive hand. We'll issue a soft alert to all listening posts. Nothing overt. No need to stir panic. Panic would be useful, Caravan snapped. It would mean we're awake. But they were already moving on. Caravan stood frozen as another issue was introduced, something about fish migration near the Kolari Reef. He walked out without asking permission. No one stopped him. Outside the chamber, he moved quickly through the archive corridors, winding through forgotten halls of sealed history. Most counselors didn't know the location of the Sector Theta vault. Caravan did. His father had taken him there once, long ago, to see the records that didn't exist. The things not taught. The warnings not shared. The access panel glowed as he approached. He placed his palm on the reader. It hesitated, then opened. Inside, the light was low. The air carried a strange warmth. Digital tombs lined the walls, data cores locked in magnetic fields. He went to the one labeled Project Echo. It pulsed softly. Alive. He tapped in his override code. The hologram rose again, the human face, this time clearer. A woman, maybe 30, dressed in survival-grade plating, a scar across her jaw. By the time you see this, she said, we will have disappeared. Not by your hands, but by our choice. Exile isn't death. It's evolution under pressure. You feared our speed. Our hunger. Our minds. She leaned forward slightly. You weren't wrong. The hologram ended. Caravan opened a secondary file, encrypted logs. Names. Locations. A network of Echo Dominion cells operating in Council space. Some active. Some dormant. But none of them destroyed. They hadn't been idle. They had waited. Watched. Embedded. He turned to leave and found the Chancellor waiting at the door. You broke protocol, she said coolly. I followed instinct, he replied. I should have you removed. Then do it. But at least pretend you're not blind. You know what this means. She studied him for a long moment. What are you really afraid of, Caravan? He looked past her, into the dark of the vault. I'm not afraid of them. I'm afraid of us, of how little we learned. We turned exile into a sentence and forgot the weight of silence. She didn't answer. Back in his private quarters, he stared at a frozen frame of the human woman's face. She looked so calm. Not angry. Not vengeful. Resolved. He opened a secure transmission channel. Illegal, untraceable, deep-layered. The kind used only by rogue assets and old spies. He recorded a short message. They're coming back. Not as victims. Not as soldiers. As something else. I tried to warn them. Now I'm warning you. He sent the file to 20 anonymous recipients scattered across unregulated systems. Some would be intercepted. One might get through. It didn't matter. The message was now in the water. And he understood something, finally, not from data, not from reports, but from a feeling deep in his bones. This wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. The fleet emerged in absolute silence, not with a roar, but a hum, low, resonant final. Cloaked vessels the size of cities glided from folded space like shadows peeling from light. There were no grand declarations, no dramatic threats. The Council's sensors didn't even register them until it was far too late. By then, entire orbital networks were offline. Communications blacked out. Systems went dark one by one, like stars winking out in a dying sky. Commander Vieira Salas stood at the center of the Wraithborn's command bridge, arms folded, eyes locked on the Council's nearest listening post, now drifting lifeless. Target 3 is silent, Kale confirmed. They've begun rerouting distress signals. But the relays don't respond. Let them scream, she replied. They won't hear themselves. Across the sector, Dominion fleets moved without haste. Their precision made it feel choreographed, nothing left to improvisation. Drop units detached from undercarriages and entered Council-controlled colonies without resistance. Doors opened to civilians who barely had time to ask questions. No one died. No one had to. They weren't here to conquer. They were here to erase the myth of peace. Aboard the Council's sector command in orbit over Telrix Prime, alarms echoed. Admiral Vokrin, six-eyed and eternally composed, barked orders while maps flooded with static. How are they inside our systems? Where are the intrusion points? One technician muttered. There are no logs. It's like they've always been here. Impossible, Vokrin snapped. Get me visuals. Get me something. Visuals came, finally, grainy feeds of Dominion soldiers walking through council halls like they owned them. Some waved at cameras. One unit stood in formation outside a munitions vault and handed the access codes to the camera operator. That feed cut seconds later. Panic swept the council systems, not because of violence, but because of its absence. The enemy wasn't killing. The enemy was taking. Back on the Wraithborn, Kale stepped forward. Intercepted signal from Telrix Command. They've requested reinforcements from Central Command. 20 fleets en route. Vieira didn't flinch. How many know they're already compromised? Half, maybe more. Then they're not reinforcements. They're our delivery system. She tapped her neural implant and linked directly with Sivra. Initiate code variant 9. Trigger ideological recursion in broadcast loops. Confirmed. In the next hour, military channels across 5 systems began airing fragments of speeches, old, corrupted, but familiar. Not sermons. Not propaganda. Memories. A mother's voice, calling her son before boarding the Exiled transports. A child reciting Earth's anthem in broken cadence. A soldier's final whisper, "Don't forget who we are." Embedded in those memories were layers of neural triggers, subtle manipulations, buried long ago in council education protocols. Seeds planted by Dominion saboteurs, nurtured for generations. Now they bloomed. Council troops across dozens of stations stopped mid-patrol, eyes unfocused. Some collapsed, shaking. Others wept. And then some began singing, an old Earth tune, outlawed and untraceable until now. Admiral Vokrin stared at a lieutenant who turned to him with tears streaming down one face. They told us you were monsters, she said quietly. But your voices sound like home. He raised his weapon, but she didn't flinch. You lost this war before it started. Her body flickered and vanished. A projection. The real Dominion agent had been there hours ago. Back on the Wraithborn, Kale read off the flood of incoming data. Fleet Sigma has turned. Beta Squadron has rerouted their formation to protect Dominion outposts. 17 officers defected. They've started transmitting human encryption back to us. Vieira allowed herself a quiet breath. They always feared our weapons. They never feared our words. Kale hesitated. What if they stop listening? They won't, she said. They've heard it before. Somewhere in their blood, they've always known it. The Council, in desperation, unleashed what they called the Shroud Directive, a blackout failsafe. Communications cut. Internal systems isolated. Civilian ports sealed. The moment it activated, Dominion fleets jumped again. This time, they didn't infiltrate. They attacked. Not with indiscriminate firepower, but surgical strikes. Fleet command bridges were flooded with neurostatic. Commanders collapsed, eyes bleeding from data overload. Drones turned on their motherships. Stations spun out of orbit after gravity wells were hacked mid-spin. And still, not a single civilian was targeted. Kale monitored the chaos. They've lost half their internal navigation systems. We've blinded 9 sectors. Begin phase inversion, Vieira said. Reconfigure satellite grids. Turn them into beacons. Kale blinked. Beacons? Not for us. For them. It's time they saw what the Council buried. On every screen, in every dome, every street, every ship still online, the same image appeared. Earth. Broken. Bleeding. Banished. The trial. The exile ships burning in orbit while the Council watched from orbit and clapped. And then the silence. One by one, the lie fell apart. The official records had never shown the executions. The isolation camps. The biological sterilization programs. Now they did. Across the galaxy, silence wasn't panic. It was guilt. Council worlds didn't fall with thunder. They bent under the weight of memory. Kale stared at the final transmission from one of the old Council founders. We thought exile would break them, Vieira answered quietly. You gave us what we never had. Unity. Purpose. And time. He swallowed. And now? No, she said. We show them what humans do when history forgets them. The war was never about land. Never about bodies. It was always about truth, and the power of those who survived long enough to weaponize it. Caravan stood alone in the outer ring of the Council archive, a place few remembered and fewer dared visit. It had taken him hours to bypass the layered encryption, but the footage was real, unedited transmissions of entire colonies going dark without fire or warning. In each case, the only residue left behind was an echo. The same pattern. A low-frequency data signature designed to replicate only when ignored. It wasn't a signal. It was a presence. He pressed his hand against the interface and watched the final clip again. A Council patrol ship drifting, no signs of damage, crew missing. A faint pulse from the ship's core, an old Earth frequency restructured into a biological loop. A viral hymn. Behind him, the door slid open. You've been busy, said the Chancellor. Her voice was too calm for someone who'd just lost half a star system. Caravan didn't turn. I warned you. She stepped beside him, eyes scanning the data in silence. I thought it would be war. Fleet to fleet. Battles like the old stories. This isn't war, Caravan said. It's metamorphosis. She narrowed her gaze. Explain. They're not here to destroy us. That would have been easy. They're here to override us. What do you mean? He gestured to the screen. Everything we're seeing, their infiltration, the psychological warfare, the silence, it's not conquest. It's conversion. Her voice grew colder. Into what? Caravan hesitated. Into them. In the Dominion flagship, Vieira reviewed the infiltration metrics. Sivra had completed the spread of phase Omega, a recursive neuroviral code piggybacking on galactic quantum relay systems. It was subtle, non-invasive, untraceable to the untrained. But once triggered, it activated genetic memory patterns planted generations ago. Embedded in learning algorithms. Toys. Music. Food. Ideas. They weren't turning enemies into corpses. They were turning them into descendants. Kale approached with a narrowed expression. Our agents report behavioral changes on every Tier 1 Council world. Dreams are aligning. Language drift accelerating. Some council cities have begun integrating Earth standard signage without orders. Compliance? Viera asked. Voluntary. She turned toward the comms deck. Broadcast to all sectors. Uncloak the mid-tier fleets. Let them see the silhouettes. Don't fire. Don't speak. Kale blinked. Psychological conditioning? No, she replied. Recognition. At the heart of Council space, hundreds of ships appeared without fanfare. Monolithic and silent. Their hulls bore no insignia. They didn't need any. Just their presence in orbit triggered historic resonance protocols across infrastructure nodes, echoed memories forced into consciousness. On the surface, ordinary citizens froze. Some dropped to their knees. Others stared skyward, unable to speak. A few whispered phrases they didn't know they knew. One word passed among them. Return. In a council emergency chamber, leaders debated in panic. Some wanted immediate retaliation. Others argued for full retreat. No one had answers. The most secure sectors were losing cohesion without a single shot fired. Propaganda failed. Military signals were co-opted and replaced with lullabies and forgotten dialects. They're rewriting our species, one senator said in disbelief. Our history. Our dreams. And we gave them everything they needed, Caravan added. Access. Infrastructure. Your ignorance. The Chancellor stood slowly. There's still time to fight. No. There isn't. Then we evacuate. To where? Caravan snapped. They're not coming for our planets. They've been here. Every generation born since the exile has carried their fingerprint. They didn't need to march on us. They bred us forward. The silence that followed was heavy, unbreakable. In the Dominion Core archive, Viera watched the interstellar response collapse in real time. Council leadership issued a blackout. Cut communications. Enforced curfews. Martial law. But none of it mattered. People didn't rebel. They just stopped listening. Sivra opened a private channel. Population index shows an 82% compliance threshold. Viral transference nearing self-sufficiency. Council infrastructure has been redefined as compatible. Assimilation complete? Viera asked. Conversion accelerating. Voluntary fusion estimated within 2 cycles. Civil unrest minimal. Kale watched her carefully. This is it then? Victory? She shook her head. This isn't victory. This is reclamation. Then what comes next? She turned to him fully. We don't build an empire on bones. We build it on memory. On identity. They thought humanity died in the dark. But we've been growing behind their eyes the whole time. Kale exhaled. No one saw it coming. No one wanted to, she said. The council built walls around their truth. We made it breathable. In a quiet district of the capital, a child traced a symbol onto a wall. He didn't know what it meant. No one had taught him. But he drew it anyway, 3 intersecting rings. The sign of Earth's final flag. An old woman approached him, staring at the symbol in wonder. Where did you see that? He shrugged. In my dream. On screens across the galaxy, Viera's face appeared, not polished, not angry. Just present. You cast us out. You erased our names. But in exile we learned patience. We planted seeds in the cracks of your history, waited as you paved over the truth. And now you are us. She paused. The silence spoke louder than thunder. We never came to destroy. We came to remind you of what you buried. And if you listen, if you let memory speak, you'll find we never left. The message ended. The stars didn't change, but everything beneath them did. The old council chamber was hollowed by silence. No debates echoed from the columns. No banners hung. No voice demanded order. A place once bloated with power now stood stripped. The great table cracked across its center like a broken oath. Commander Viera Salas stepped over the threshold, boots clicking softly against the polished stone. She didn't bring guards. She didn't need to. No one was left to resist. Sivra pulsed in her neural link. Final node secure. All known resistance has ceased. Assimilation programs are now self-sustaining. Shall I begin administrative conversion? Not yet, she answered quietly. Let them sit with it. The galaxy was quiet now, not out of fear, but comprehension. The moment had passed when war could solve anything. The idea of resistance had unraveled once people understood what they had become. There was no one left to fight. Only those who wanted to remember, and those who were afraid to admit they already had. Kale entered behind her. Council communications just terminated their last encoded channel. There's no leadership left. Not in name, not in action. Was there ever? Viera said. They had the architecture of power, he said. But it rotted from the inside. We didn't collapse their rule. We just peeled back the paint. She nodded. Then it's time. He hesitated. You're sure? No speech? No declaration? They'll expect something. They've heard enough words. Still, Kale couldn't help but speak. I don't think they feared extinction, Viera. I think they feared transformation. She looked back at him. Then we gave them the perfect ending. She crossed to the head of the chamber and set down an object wrapped in dark cloth. Her hands were steady as she unfolded it, a piece of old earth alloy, bent and weathered, bearing the faded insignia of a forgotten fleet. She left it there, in the center of the broken table, as a monument no one had asked for. Sivra, she said, broadcast this location to the open net. No encryption. No commentary. Let them see what their past built. Kale turned to her, searching her face for something. You could have taken the throne. Given them a new order. A government. They don't need another ruler, she said. They need memory. That's stronger than law. In a colony thousands of light years away, a child watched the stream of the empty chamber. Her father didn't explain. He didn't need to. She saw the flag. Saw the scar on the woman's jaw. And felt something in her chest shift, like a key turning in a lock she didn't know existed. Elsewhere, on a council warship that had never engaged, the commander walked through his bridge in silence. No alerts. No orders. The crew watched the feed, eyes tracking the woman who had never raised her voice, who had never demanded loyalty, only understanding. He powered down the ship's core and removed his badge. He placed it on the console and walked out. Caravan watched from a distance, still alive, still ignored. He sat in a cold observatory, feeding himself archived data and the final Dominion messages. There was no resistance to document. No uprising. Only the slow, steady shift of people waking into their inheritance. He whispered to himself. They didn't come to conquer. They came to complete the sentence. The Chancellor had disappeared weeks earlier. Whether she was alive, it didn't matter anymore. Her voice wouldn't carry weight even if she screamed. The systems she once ruled now responded to different algorithms. Ones they never noticed had changed until they couldn't tell the difference between obedience and belief. Sivra returned. Public consensus forming around the transition. Dominion markers now considered standard across 72% of inhabited systems. Remaining dissent is non-hostile. Cultural alignment expected within 2 cycles. And the others? Viera asked. Assimilation by influence. Resistance will recede naturally as ideological displacement deepens. No force required. She closed her eyes. Then we did it right. Kale sat on the fractured steps of the chamber. I wonder what they'll call us 100 years from now. The invaders? The saviors? The virus? She shook her head. None of that matters. Names are for the dead. They'll call themselves human. That's enough. He looked up at her. And us? She smiled faintly. We were the echo. Across the stars, lights flickered back on in stations once blacked out. Schools opened with new curricula that somehow felt familiar. Songs returned to playlists that hadn't existed in centuries. Children drew shapes they couldn't name, all of them orbiting 3 lines and a circle. A new age had arrived, not one born from gunfire, but resonance. Not shaped by domination, but by the quiet, inescapable return of something buried too deep to die. Viera left the chamber without looking back. And the galaxy followed her,